Hello and welcome to ELSAConnect. ELSA is the Lady Shri Ram College alumni, and ELSAConnect was initiated here in Bangalore mid-March when the lockdown came upon us in COVID times. And we set this up to stay connected with one another. It's a space where ELSA share their journeys, their life, their skills, and we come together worldwide on this particular platform. We are also live on YouTube, and we meet twice a week. So if you miss this session today, you can always go back on YouTube and watch us live. Thank you. I'd really like to thank the team here, Yumna, Neelu, Sandhya, Nalini, Tanya, Ruchi, Priti, and Kaveri for supporting us so diligently through this entire journey since March. So today's ELSAConnect is a very special one. You know, we are featuring the Partition Museum, and it's a fellow batchmate, Kishwar, who was also Miss LSR. Kishwar, welcome, very warm welcome. And this session is about her dreams, her aspiration, and her challenges that she faced in setting up the Partition Museum. It's a museum of memories, and I had the opportunity of visiting it about 2 years ago, and it has really encapsulated so much to do with the partition. So we will have more on this later. We also have ELSA Partition Stories, which we have invited and we are running in collaboration with the museum. We have ELSA Ruchi from Bangalore and Nanki, who's also an ELSA from the Partition Museum, collating and sharing stories on our Instagram handles, which are both on ELSA Bangalore as well as the Partition Museum. It's really a space where we are getting stories from our dada, dadi, nana, nani, our parents, granduncles, aunts, and many of us grew up listening to these stories. So do join and share if you're in ELSA. The link will be shared on chat and otherwise, but please do share a story if you have one, whether it's from Bengal or whether it's from Punjab. We really, really would appreciate this. And I'd like to thank those who already sent in their stories. They've just been pouring in, so I'm going to read out the names. Thank you so much, Ajanta, Molika, Neelu, Anu, Savita, Nina, Ruchika, Binu, Ratna, Vibha, Parul, Rashmi. You know, stories are pouring in, whether you're sitting here in New York or Singapore or Delhi or Bangalore or Mumbai. Please do share your stories if you have one. You know, for me, this is also very, very special because I myself grew up hearing stories both from my maternal and paternal sides. My parents were both born in Pakistan, mom in Rawalpindi and dad from, you know, the Northwest frontier. So 2 years ago, actually, not 4 years ago, actually, one had the opportunity of visiting Karachi and Lahore and also Nankana Sahib, where Guru Nanak Ji was born. And we retraced our roots in Jeev and I. We visited the Wagah border from Lahore. We saw my, albeit only from outside, my Nana's home, which is now Jinnah House in Lahore. And we visited our father's college, which was FC College. You know, the warmth we received and the care and how they welcomed us, it really made us feel that, you know, a certain connectedness. Lahore was so much like Delhi. So it's very, very special. And, you know, the stories that are being shared here are also of valor, of grief, of loss. And at the same time, it's bringing everyone together, because those who've sort of not shared these stories are able to now dig deep. You know, some of them have been just closed up and not voiced anything that they felt. So thanks to this, we are able to get to know our roots. I'd like to just add one more thing is, you know, a friend of mine when I was in Karachi actually said that I asked, would you like something from there? She's Sindhi. And she said, yes, can you bring me back some soil from Karachi? I thought it was a very unusual request, but she said, I want to feel that, like meri mitti hai. And I did actually carry back some soil from her, for her. It's a lost state, Sindh. So over to you, Rush, to take it further with Kishwar. Kishwar, thank you so much for joining us and being here today. And all of you who are joining us on YouTube and in the room, thank you. Just makes ELSAConnect grow stronger and stronger. Thank you ever so much. Rush, over to you.
Thank you so much, Vinny. It was so beautiful what you shared. Very, very warm welcome to you, Kishwar, to the ELSAConnect Museum of Memories. We as ELSA are delighted to have you with us and so ever proud of you, of all that you are and all that you've achieved. Lady Kishwar Desai, Economic Honors, 1977. She received the Distinguished Alumnus Award from our alma mater in 2019 for her work in arts, literature, and modern and Indian history. Married to the Baron, Meghnad Desai, the British economist and the Labour politician. Kishwar is a TV professional and award-winning author. She is a Costa First Novel Awardee for her book, Witness the Night. And our heartiest congratulations to you on your latest book, Kishwar, your sixth, The Longest Kiss, The Life and Times of Devika Rani, a biography of the actress. You're a trustee of the Gandhi Statue Memorial Trust, in which you set up the statue of Mahatma Gandhi in Westminster. You're the chair of the Arts and the Cultural Heritage Trust that set up the world's first Partition Museum at Town Hall, Amritsar. I can never forget our time in school together in Ferozpur, Kishwar. Both our dads were posted there and we went to the same school, the KV school, if you please, together. And although I was much older than you, you were about 8, I think. I can never forget your dimples, your lovely curly hair, and the fact that we acted in a play together where I was the queen and you were my princess. And we used to have a great time with our parents because our parents were very close friends. Your dad was head of the police. My dad was head of the army at that time. And we enjoyed all those fun times, and your parents have not changed in all these years. It's so wonderful. But then I met you, Kishwar, years later when I was visiting the House of Lords to give a talk on Vidya, if you please. And I was introduced to Lady Desai by Sheila Fladder. And I jumped because I recognized you right away with your dimples and smile has not changed. And the charm. And I said, wow, this is the Ferozpur Kishwar Rosha that I remember. Yes, Miss LSR, like one that I introduced you, a hostler, a debating society, an actress. You were closely in touch with several of your friends from LSR. And it'll be wonderful if you can share with us, Kishwar, one special memory down memory lane from your time at LSR. It'd be lovely if you can share
that. Thank you so much, Rashmi. That is a wonderful and very kind introduction. I don't really quite feel worthy of all the nice things that you've said, but of course, being the wonderful person you are, as are many, many Elsas who are here featured, you have said some excellent things. But I do want to point out that being Miss LSR was not as much fun as it sounds like today, because this was very much part of our ragging, which was pretty ghastly, I can assure you. And I still remember the one time when Elsa, I'm just trying to remember her name, she came up to me and she said that, your pressure, your eyes are too big, so I'm going to tape them down. And I'm going to give you a thimble, and you have to fill up this bucket of water going up the stairs. So, and I was this Jalandhar di Kudi, I was like straight out of Jalandhar. I didn't know who I was dealing with, all these very svelte Dilli walis, that kind of thing. So I did it very seriously. I went up and down the stairs. And ragging was very much that. And the ragging was part of, I had never, for example, shaped my eyebrows. So these seniors came and they threaded my eyebrows. You must look good. They said, you're going to be parading on stage for Miss LSR. So that's how we all got pushed onto stage. We had no clue what was happening.
Well
and
done.
suddenly they announced, okay. I said, fine, great. But it was a daze. But it was also great fun. We made the most wonderful friends ever through that ragging, the seniors especially.
The ragging really helped you to get closer to those seniors, right?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. So you have so many achievements, Kishwar, but your greatest achievement has been the creation of the Partition Museum and bringing it to life. It's a janoon, literally a janoon, a complete passion to make this happen. And against all odds, you are a visionary, and your spirit of never giving up to make this amazing People's Museum happen is just incredible. It's the first partition museum it was set up in 2016 and is counted amongst the top 15 museums in the world today. As we all know, the partition of India, as so many of us have shared, was one of the most defining events in the history of our country and our subcontinent. It's the largest migration in human history. Up to 20 million people were affected. Despite the extensive loss of life and property, 70 years later, there's a complete laguna there is nobody who's bothered to document or to even share or even express anything about all those millions of people who suffered. The Partition Museum aims to fill that void, right? And tell us the story or the voices of those who lived and survived this ordeal. I visited the museum myself 2 years ago, and I was absolutely overwhelmed and moved to tears. And so many elders, like you shared, have shared their heart-wrenching stories and emotional stories about their own elders, stories of courage, resilience, valor, survival. My own family, my own mother was the last to leave Pakistan. And one of my uncles was in charge of the transit camps near Mumbai. But I really wish I had documented all this. I remember you telling me to tell mom to write, and I never got a chance, and I never, I lost that chance. But the details of many are missing, but let's try and see whatever reference we have, we can try and gather from those who are still there. So we'd love you to share, Kishwar, what inspired you, the effort, the challenge to create the team with you to further this historic, emotional, alive, and award-winning Partition Museum and your plans going forward. Over to you, Kishwar.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. But before we get into further details, it'd be nice to see a very short film. It's a 4-minute film, which gives you a glimpse into what the Partition Museum is all about and what we have tried to do. And then I can explain further later on. May we have the film, please?
मथे चमकदा हुसन मेहताब दाजी हाय আমার সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি চিরদিন তোমার আকাশ চিরদিন তোমার আকাশ তোমার বাতাস আমার প্রাণে
अज आखा वारिस शाद कितों कबरां विचों बोल अज आखा वारिस शाद ਭਰੀ ਜਨਾਬ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਪੰਜਾਂ ਪਾਣੀਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜ਼ਹਿਰ ਲਾ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਾਣੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਲਾ ਇਸ ਜ਼ਰਖੇਜ਼ ਜ਼ਮੀਨ ਤੇ ਲੋਹੋਂ ਫੁੱਟਿਆ ਜ਼ਹਿਰ ਗਿੱਠ ਗਿੱਠ ਚੜੀਆਂ ਲਾਲੀਆਂ ਫੁੱਟ ਫੁੱਟ ਚੜਿਆ ਕਹਿਰ ਵਹੋ ਬਰਸੀ ਬਾਪ ਬਣ ਬਣ ਬਗੀਚਾ ਉਹਨੇ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਬਾਂਸ ਦੀ ਮੰਜਲੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਨਾਗ ਬਣਾ ਨਾਗਾ ਕੀਲੇ ਲੋਕ ਨੂੰ ਬਸ ਫਿਰ ਢੰਗ ਹੀ ਢੰਗ ਪਲੋ ਪਲੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਨੀਲੇ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ
मेरे एक मित्र डॉक्टर सुबेन सिंह सिद्धू जो जिन्होंने पंजाब की हिस्ट्री पे काफी काम किया है उन्होंने मुझे इस म्यूजियम के बारे में बताया
I've seen this museum and it's a very well documented, very wonderful documentation of people's lives and their pains. I just hope that our next generation can learn from this museum by coming here, looking, listening, reading.
ਇੱਕ ਨੁਕਤੇ ਚ ਗੱਲ ਮੁਕਦੀ ਏ ਇੱਕ ਨੁਕਤੇ ਚ ਗੱਲ ਮੁਕਦੀ ਏ ਫੜ ਨੁਕਤਾ ਚੋਰ ਹਿਸਾਬਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫੜ ਨੁਕਤਾ ਚੋਰ ਹਿਸਾਬਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਨੁਕਤੇ ਚ ਗੱਲ ਮੁਕਦੀ ਏ
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, there seems to have been some sort of an issue with the film because the video was frozen and the audio was not all there. But hopefully we can rectify it later on. But in the meanwhile, I just want to give you a sense of what Rashmi spoke about earlier on what was the reason why we set up the Partition Museum and what, as she said, made me think of such an idea because there hadn't been one for ever since it was set up was 2017, and there hadn't been one since the partition of India since 1947. The reason is that, actually, to be honest, I had thought about this about 25 years ago. At that time, I was a television professional, and I thought that, all over the world, people do have memorials dedicated to tragedies, dedicated to what changed the life of that particular nation. We, of course, know that there is a Holocaust Museum. There is also the Hiroshima Memorial. And of course, more recently, there is 9/11. But in those days, as I said, 20, 25 years back, I was firmly dissuaded by everybody that this was not something I could manage on my own. And I should definitely, let it go. Later on, I was told to do a virtual museum. There were many people, including my own family, who thought that I should not do it because it's also a difficult area to traverse. And there had been so much silence around the partition. And that was something that was worrying for many of us who were working in that area by that time. So around, I think it was in 2015, when we set up the Gandhi statue at Westminster outside Parliament, that's when I realized that why was I holding back? If we could have achieved this, and honestly, it was a challenging experience. My husband and I were given this crazy timeline of raising about £1 million in order to set up the Mahatma Gandhi statue outside of Parliament. And we had only about, I think, 4 to 5 months to do it. And honestly, we did not have enough even between ourselves to think or dream of such a thing. So we had to raise the money. And what I realized was that there was so much generosity out there. We are mistaken when we say that Indians are not generous, they're not philanthropists. Our experience was very different. We ended up raising $1.5 million, which was far more than what we required for the Gandhi statue. And we ended up giving it away to lots of charities that are now based in the UK. So then I decided rather, that maybe I could take this challenge on. My husband again tried to dissuade me, but like all good wives, I did not listen to him and said, no, this is my thing. I have to try and do it because my parents are from the partition generation. I have grown up with these stories. I owe it to them. Were it not for their silent, quiet, very dignified withdrawal from what was their home, and then have to suffer all kinds of indignities in setting up home all over again. Were it not for them, we probably would not have had freedom even. And all those lives that were lost, we needed to honor. So I requested some of my friends and family, and we set up this trust in 2015. This trust was, so the founding members are my daughter, whom I managed to persuade because we needed a younger person. We thought that what if something happens to one of us? So we roped her in. There was Dipali Khanna, and there was Bindu Manchanda, who was also into heritage, and Dipali was formerly with IGNCA, Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. And I thought these were all good people, and they could come in and maybe help us with this. And nobody said no. This was the surprising thing. We met over coffee, and none of them tried to dissuade me, which was a new thing for me because I'm always ready for a fight, ready for a challenge. And then we decided that why don't we, in order to sensitize people outside, have a series of seminars, exhibitions, because we didn't have any money. We didn't even have a place where we could put up this Partition Museum. We had no idea what it was going to look like, what was going to go into it. But in order to gather people around us and to sensitize others, what were we going to do? So the first event that we had was at the India Habitat Center. And this was a real eye-opener for us because this was an event where I was told that only 5 people would show up. And they would be mostly in their 80s or 90s, and they would only want to talk about their own partition stories. And but very bravely, we went and booked the main hall at the IIC, which was the auditorium, which would seat around 360 people, I think. And what was really, really wonderful was that more than 1,500 people showed up. And they practically were battering the door down. Many of my friends could not attend because they said when we came, we thought we came leisurely. We didn't expect anyone there, but it was packed. There were people sitting on the floor. We could not enter. There was such enthusiasm. So this was it. This is what was the turning point for us. So there we had put together a kind of, it was like a little film that we put together. And we said that here we'll show you what we plan to do in the museum, because people were unclear. What is the museum actually going to be showing? I mean, are we only going to have photographs that all of us have sometimes seen, such as the Margaret Burke White, or are we going to have something more than that? So we went through, we explained to them the need and requirement for the Partition Museum and also what was going to be in it. And what was fortunate for us was the media picked it up. We didn't think anybody would come. We had not even, I can't remember, we'd invited the media even, but they were like really helpful. They came in, they wrote about it. They said that this is a group that is now going ahead and setting up this Partition Museum. And whenever they asked us, where are you doing it? We said, we don't know. We don't have a clue. So then after that, we did another sensitizing event, which was at the India Art Fair. And then later on, we did one at the Habitat Center, which was actually the largest exhibition that we did completely on our own before the museum was even set up. And I'd also done these kind of events in the UK, in the House of Lords, and with closed groups elsewhere in Amritsar, just trying to sense that what are people looking out for? And what we found was a remarkable energy that people really wanted this museum. They were keen and they wanted to give their stories. And on that very first day at the IIC and later at the Habitat Center, which was amazing was that whilst we had put up all these photographs, we had managed to locate photographs of, for example, refugee camps in Delhi. Now, these photographs had been lying unseen, not even looked at, within the National Archives and within the Nehru Memorial. But we went there, we got them blown up, we put them around, we said that, look, did you know that so many areas of Delhi used to be refugee camps? And these were, new things for people even of Delhi. But we had a lot of people coming in at that point and wanting to donate things to us. So we kept on saying, look, hang on, we don't have anything as yet. But what was happening was, while we were doing this sensitization effort, simultaneously, I was also going around looking at spaces where we could have the museum. Now, I was told that there is something which we could have done at Noida. People, and I have to say, I was very moved when one Sikh gentleman met me and he said, look, I have at Kartarpur, around that area, I have about 2 acres of land. I can give it to you if you want to make the museum. But I told him that we were in a big rush because we needed to have the museum up by 2017, which is the 70th year since the partition of India. Many of the people whom we are featuring in this museum are very old, and we don't want to take a risk building a building, because making a huge monument and then losing them by the time the museum is going to be opened, or at least let them know that such a museum is coming up. So then, by our sheer good fortune, one thought of going to Punjab, and I met the Chief Minister, the then Chief Minister, Prakash Singh Badal, who luckily for us was very, very passionate about museums. This was his passion. He had already set up quite a few. And when the moment I told him that this is what I want to do, he said, Bibi, he said in Thet Punjabi, Bibi, tusi nahi karoge, to assi kar lange, meaning if you don't do it, I will set up this museum. So I said, great. He was so enthusiastic. I mean, he was even at that time quite old, but he came with us, wherever we said that, look, he met us in Chandigarh and he organized for us to go around Amritsar, because I said maybe Amritsar because it's so close to the Wagah border, and Delhi was proving far too expensive. Even if it was in Noida, I doubted that we could raise that kind of money. So we thought that let's try Amritsar. By the way, when I say money, it was all money that was begged and borrowed or loaned from friends and family and, that kind of thing, including my son's in-laws, so it was that desperate, that anybody who would give us money, we would just say, give it, So then we went to Amritsar, and in Amritsar, what was very interesting was that they were again willing to give us land, beautiful locations, but quite fortunately, the town hall was then, though it was in a pretty derelict state at that time, it was meant to be restored. So we heard about this. It was a very challenging kind of a building to take on. If you go there, you'll notice it's huge. And so everybody thought we were quite crazy to opt for that. But at that time, I had with me, a very spunky person who used to also work in the World Bank at that time, Gitanjali Chaturvedi. And she said, no, we can do it. So, all along, what was very nice was that I kept on meeting people who were saying, yes, you can do it. We can do it. So there was nobody saying, no, what are you getting? I mean, there were a lot of people who thought we were crazy, but it was very nice to get this kind of constant reassurance that, yes, we can do it. Somehow we will do it. So it was difficult. We had to go to the government and request them. And I think Dipali, one of our colleagues and trustees, will later talk about the PPP mode. But the public-private partnership was the mode that we decided to go in for, which meant that the Sarkar, the government, would give us the building, and we would have to raise all the money that would go in. Now, this had never been done before in Punjab, or indeed very rarely done anywhere in the country. So it was totally new, but we were very fortunate that the then Chief Minister and then the Chief Minister now, Captain Amrinder Singh, all of them felt very strongly that this is part of Punjab's history. This is the story of Punjab, and there is no way that we cannot support it. So this was very important for us. This kind of support, believe me, is very rare. So they said, But we had to go through the tender route. We had to jump through all the hoops. And again, it was miraculous how people came. Someone would come forward and do the design for us. Somebody else would come forward. And we kept telling them that, look, I don't know when quite we'll be able to pay you, and if you will indeed get paid, but this is a voluntary thing. This is something which we're all doing out of our own passion. And that is the reason why we are in it. We're all volunteers. At that time, we were paying no one. Anyone working for us at that time. We do have some paid employees now. I'll come to that later. But at that time, we did not have anybody. It was just all voluntary. The wonderful thing was the number of young people who came forward. We had lots and lots of interns. Believe me that by the time we did our first exhibition and by the time we were setting up just the curtain raiser in Amritsar, we had at times 30 to 40 interns, just young kids who came forward and said, we want to record stories, we want to work with you, we want to go and research, we want to do this, whatever. So they would come forward and, and so we were able to take baby steps, but we were able to take the steps forward. We are very fortunate, people like Poonam Behel, who came forward, like she had a shop in Khan Market, and she said, why don't you just use this as my office, as your office, my shop as your office. So that was like a great thing. To have an address which said Khan Market was already a step forward for us, because it seemed that if you had an address saying Khan Market, a lot of people thought, oh boy, they're doing well, so then they would come to us and they would also support us. So there were lots and lots of people who were there at that time working together, trying to see that this was moving forward. What was also interesting for us was that the research which we were doing was completely new. Now, people did not, as I said, did not quite comprehend what would this museum contain. And this is the interesting thing, because we decided to make it like a narrative. It would be a museum which was like a book. This was the way I can easily explain it. We had the town hall would have eventually 17,000 square feet and 14 galleries. So we decided that it was going to be like a narrative. There would be it's a single story. I mean, the museum tells only one historical, narrates one historical incident, but we look at it from various ways and various means. And so we start from pre-partition Punjab, what was it like? And then slowly we wind our way through, and then we come through the point where Punjab and Bengal have to be partitioned, and then so on. So we begin, the first few galleries are about pre-partition Punjab and also Bengal, and then we go through that. So it became, as I said, a book with 14 chapters, but all this research had to be done from scratch. There was nowhere, any place that we could. This is the tragedy, because when the British left India, they took everything with them. All the papers from 1947 up to 1947 now lie in some British library. The original papers lie there. Some of them were left behind here, but very few. Most of them just went in shapes and whatever. And so every bit of research that we needed to do, every photograph that we needed, many documents that we needed were all lying in libraries abroad. So we had to actually, with no money or anything, start doing all of this, looking for documents, looking for photographs, looking for things that we could put in the museum so that it could become a complete and holistic narrative. So these were some of the many challenges that we were facing right at the beginning. And as I said, since it was a unique concept, a lot of people did not quite understand what we were doing, but we managed actually, I don't know, so I always look back and think it was really a miracle, because there were so many people who suddenly would come out of nowhere and support us. I still remember one of the first donations that we got was this gentleman who came and visited. I thought he was visiting. He had seen us set up the Gandhi statue in the UK. So he knew something that, okay, these guys try and do what they say they're doing. So he came with that expectation. But when he came to Amritsar and he saw this building, gorgeous building, but still the work is going on. There is no museum. Everything is looking like a little far away. And he met me there and he said that, look, I have come here because I hear that you, need money, and I thought I would look around. And he wanted to dedicate a space for his wife. So I took him around and I said, this is what we have. And, and so he said, okay, I'm going to think about it. And then he started walking off. And I said, like many people, this has happened to us constantly. Many people will come, promise you tall things, and then maybe nothing will happen. But then sometimes something does. And in this case, it did happen. He did not go away. He walked around a little bit, came back, and there was a truck standing there. I think all the Malba was coming out of the building, and it was still under, it was still being restored at that point. And that time he took out his checkbook and he actually wrote a check out. I can't disclose the amount, but it was a staggeringly large amount. He just wrote it on the spot. I still have that photograph. And I was like, oh my God, this is how miracles happen. So I think this was what then kept inspiring us, that people do believe in what we are doing. They do understand that this is a very important part of our history and it should not be forgotten. So like that, the Curtain Raiser exhibition, believe you me, when we started, this was in around 2015, as I said, we gave ourselves, as usual, a deadline that in another 3 months, we're going to set up the Curtain Raiser exhibition, which is going to be set up in 3 galleries. Again, by a sheer stroke of good fortune, we found that a team almost automatically fell into place. This was a miracle. I don't quite know how it happened, but we managed to get a designer who came on board, did not take any money up front, but said that, okay, you pay me as you get the money. Malika, my daughter, whom I referred to, said that she would take 6 months off from the Gates Foundation where she was working, and she would help us set it up. All those interns that I've spoken about, they also came in and they said that they would work day and night. So the Curtain Raiser exhibition, which was around 3 small galleries, was set up within the space of about 3 to 4 months, and it gave us a new impetus to go forward. This was also an exhibition which was then visited by dignitaries, really, which was wonderful for us, such as Arun Jaitley, the former finance minister. So people like him visiting and taking this museum seriously, what we were trying to set up, was something that changed a lot of things. And the media coverage, the media, I really have to thank, because as I said, we started with nothing, but slowly things started coming in, and I would just keep getting calls all the time. I have my dadi's sari, I have my, and friends started calling up and saying that they had relatives, they had friends, they had people whom they know, whom I could, we could get by that time. And so my home was also flowing, as were the homes of many friends, including Bunty, whose the homes were just overflowing with stuff, because people started giving us stuff, which we then started putting around and saying that we should really use all this material. I have to say that in the beginning, we needed to do the oral history recordings, but we again did not have cameras, we did not have editing equipment. Miraculously, again, a friend put us in touch with Amity University, and they offered us their department of media. And so suddenly we had, by some good fortune, 6 or 7 students working with us, with their cameras, with their editing units, with everything, going out with us, doing the recordings for all these oral histories that we felt we had to collect and put into the museum super fast. Because as I said, the people that we were going to be recording were pretty elderly, and we were very anxious about that moment. Initially, I have to tell you, I also did a lot of the recordings myself, because this was before I would just hire a camera, pay my own money, go there, do it, and come back. And this was important, because when we went and did our pitches to people who we wanted them to donate money to us, they wanted to see what kind of material we had. So initially, we would show them all the things that we had collected along the way. So after we did the first 3, the Curtain Raiser in the first 3 galleries, the real target came into view, which was to set up the museum by 2017. And again, the building was not even ready. This was really something which is very worrying, because we managed to get the 3 small galleries, but the rest of the building was still under restoration. And we were really anxious, because we said we have a deadline. And so it became quite phenomenal. You know, we would be working and we would literally be cleaning the floors ourselves, and you know, all the volunteers and all of us, and trying to get all the building stuff ready. And of course, with a lot of help from the government. By that time, they also realized, hey, these guys are serious. You know, actually, what I think what had happened was, everybody thought that after they gave us the building, we would probably just fizzle out within a month or so. And then we would come to them and say, sorry, we could not do this, you know, I mean, for XYZ reason. The fact that we were going on, and donors were coming forward, people were coming forward to support us, was something which I think quite astonished not only us, but also everybody else that we were dealing with. This is because, and I come back to this again and again, it is not because we were doing such a great job. It was the sacrifice of all those millions of people that had gone unrecorded, which became a kind of crying point for everybody. It became a point where everybody started rallying around and saying, look, we have to do something. How can we allow these memories to go to waste? Because everywhere in the world, when people commemorate these brave and inspirational, and some of the stories were really inspirational, you know, how they came with nothing and they set up. And Rashmi, I think you sent me one such story just today about one of your uncle, I think in-laws, who set up the Wakefield company despite the fact that he came with nothing in his pocket, and how he struggled and so on. So this became the Apollo Tire Company. There's so many companies that we can name today were all set up by people who were refugees. And again, amongst our trustees and supporters was one phenomenal story again about how a grandfather had come and he had literally set up shop on the pavement, because this was then what became Janpat, because then he went to Nehru, and and Nehru said that, we need to have some shops around here, proper shops, and that's how Janpat came up. So not only were we telling the story of all the migrants, we were also telling the story of what happened to India. How did India get transformed? What was the new India that these people were building? And in many ways, these people were the builders of India, because they came with the experience, they came with the knowledge. A lot of them had amazing businesses which they had to leave behind in Pakistan. They left behind, houses and lots of material objects also, which they could not carry. So the most terrible and devastating stories came to us. But the important thing was that there were also stories which were inspirational. And let me also point out, very few of them, very, very few of them, maybe 0.1% had any bitterness. Most of them longed, like, earlier Vandana was saying, a lot of them longed to go back to their ancestral homes. They wanted to go and see it. And especially the current generation, the new generation had no angst. They actually, all they were keen was that let us gather this material and let us try and build upon it, make a historical context for this museum. So whilst we were trying to get the government restoration people out of the building, literally sweeping them out, we were also trying to get all our material in. So it was really, really, I would say, a battle against everything it sometimes seemed like was up against us, but we were battling out there. Many of us shifted to Amritsar almost, you could say, semi-permanently. Our team out here was working 24/7. I know that a lot of those young interns and other people did not go home. Remember, we had no resources. Most museums in India are funded by the government, and the government takes care. So you will always hear 200 crores, 150 crores, so many crores. We had nothing. If we got even 50 lakhs, you would say, wow, what can we do? So we learned to be frugal. We learned to be very wise about how every paisa was being spent. And that is why when people come and see the museum and they say, this is one of the best they've seen in the world, we always turn around and say, I wish you knew that what little money and how much love and passion went into creating this museum, because we genuinely believed that these stories needed to be told. Somebody earlier had spoken about the silences, and this is very important, because I still remember that there was this one gentleman whom we interviewed in the UK. He had left with his family after partition and settled down in the UK. Do you know, till I spoke to him, this is about 2 years ago when I went and interviewed him, he had never, ever, ever spoken about the partition to anyone. And when he started telling us the story, and he says, you know, for me, he was quite elderly by then, he was in his 80s, he said, this is like a catharsis. And then he started crying, and because he had seen the most horrendous things, and he said, I just want someone to listen, someone to know what I had to go through, and then how I had to rebuild my life. And I think that was also the big tragedy that we did. We forced our elders for many years to live in that jail, I would say, in that confinement of silence, without encouraging them to talk or to have that conversation, which is why I'm really grateful that today we have, through the ELSA group, all this going on. So very quickly, I know I'm going to be running out of time, so I will just quickly fast forward to the fact that we manage. I know you'll all think that this sounds a bit fantastical, but those of you who have gone and seen the museum know this is true, that we managed to collect material to fill up 14 galleries. And then we also, like you were not able to hear the audio of that, we also recorded music. We recorded original music such as Heer and so on for the museum, because we felt that, and of course Amar Shonar Bangla, because we said that, and I really, if you're standing in the gallery and you're listening to this, you will cry, because, you know, this is something which is so moving when you think that how cruelly these two states were divided. So all that is there. It all talks about how the Ratcliffe line was drawn, what happened. So it tells you the whole history of where the movement began. Firstly, the whole story about independence, the freedom fighters, then how this partition idea comes up, and then after that, how the two states get divided, and how ruthlessly and how quickly they are divided overnight. Now, why did we choose the 17th of 17th of August to have Partition Remembrance Day? Indeed, we have requested the Punjab government to declare it Partition Remembrance Day, and that was the day that we were going to have our inauguration as well. So it was all quite mad, because till the day of the inauguration, I still remember running around and saying, is the lift working? Is the electricity there? You know, because we didn't know. We were living so much from day to day and trying to get everything, but it was like a good Indian shadi where everything comes together at the end. But it was nerve-wracking, I have to say. So 17th was because the British were very clever. 15th of August, they gave us our independence. I mean, they said you are now independent countries, but they did not want to take the blame for the partition. So 17th of August, when when India was independent, you can say, is when the Ratcliffe Award was announced. And this is the most frightening bit. And we have stories of people who actually woke up on the 17th to realize they were in Pakistan. They had no idea. And as many of you know, Lahore was not meant to go to Pakistan till the very last minute. It was a very, very, just a week before partition, it was decided. So we have advertisements in the museum, which you can see, where people are encouraging, people to buy land, because they thought that this is going to be the new, capital, another great city of Punjab, which is going to go to India, whereas they had not realized. And similarly, the fate of Calcutta, hung in the balance. There were many, many such fears which were played upon, and which are now documented and kept in the museum. We also have in the museum, apart from all these historical documents, and we have actual documents. We are not putting our own, this thing on the museum, but we are trying to give the documents there so that the person who goes through, and we have lots of oral histories. In every gallery, you will find an oral history supporting what we are saying. So even if we are talking about World War I or World War II, we have, voices of soldiers or people who had actually been there. So even if we talk about a Jallianwala Bagh, we actually have recorded voices which tell you what it was like. And even if we have the Bengal famine, famine, we actually have newspapers and so on there, which tell you exactly what happened during the Bengal famine. So we are trying to give the official version, but we also tell you what the people's version is. This is the most important part of this museum, is that it is unlike most other museums, I would say, almost all museums you see in India. This is a people's museum. It carries the voices of the people. It has the oral histories. It has their narratives all throughout. So when you come in, you understand that whilst the grand and the glorious were dividing up the country and doing various things, they were the people of India who were suffering in many ways. So we have art installations. We also have art. We have, art from Satish Gujralji, from Krishan Khannaji, and Arpana Kaur, and so on. And, this is what helps the museum visitor understand what exactly was happening. We also talk about the millions of women who were raped and abused and also who disappeared. So we have a well there, which is to commemorate their memory. So that is also there. So the point is that this museum gives you a sense of why partition happened. It is an experiential museum. So when you go in through the music, through the oral histories, through the memories, you will begin to understand why they were so devastated. And why did millions of people just disappear, as you can say, from Bengal and from Punjab during the partition? We are very fortunate that we are still being able to record these stories. But the last gallery, I have to say, is called the Gallery of Hope. And that is where, ultimately, through all these journeys, which is, you come to the last gallery, because that gallery, we have a lot of inspirational stories there. So we have stories of Milkha Singh, who also, most of you would be aware what he suffered during the partition and how he forced himself to become the great runner, that athlete that he did, and Dr. Manmohan Singh, and many others who were at that point during partition 1947 bereft of everything, but how they did not lose hope. And I think that is the importance of this museum. We talk about the fact that we must care for each other. There must not be any communal violence, because you can see the effects of the communal violence in the museum. It also talks about the fact how we must never, ever lose hope. Because today, I think a kid loses his mobile phone and he's devastated. But when you look at these families who lost everything, and we have tents, actual tents, which we have created in the Gallery of Refuge. So you go there and you see how their grandparents lived. In these charpais, and so many stories, including, for example, Bari Sons that in Khan Market that we all go to. They also, when they had that difficult journey, they had to live within a refugee camp, and everybody had a refugee card. If you see that card, it is heartbreaking. You have no identity. You're a refugee. You're in a new country, and then you have to try. For them, it was a new country, for those who came from there, and they had to reestablish themselves here. So the museum tries to tell all these separate narratives. It was extremely hard work, but as I said, always the real credit goes to our young team who was working day and night, and trying to get this museum ready. And yes, we did open it at 11 a.m., I think, on the 17th of August. And I still remember the BBC team that came to interview us on the 15th or 16th of August. And they said, are you sure this is going to be ready in 2 days' time? And I said, yes, we are here. We are going to make this happen. And because they could hear the noises of the carpentry work going on and this and that, the electricity, nightmarish stuff was happening. Suddenly on the nth moment, we realized we needed a generator, we needed this, we needed that. But it all fell into place. And I think a lot of it was to do with the blessings of those who had been forced to remain silent all these years, many of those who had lost their lives. And I think they showered all those blessings upon us, and ultimately allowed us to make this museum a reality, and our young and enthusiastic team, because by that time, Malika had given up her job with the Gates Foundation and said, I better do this full time because we have a deadline. And that was amazing of her to do so. And many other kids like her, Ganeev and others. And of course, we have Nanki here, who could possibly go out there and earn a huge amount of money. But they all work with this because they all share this dream that this museum has to, and a part of the contract was also that we had to run it. We not only had to establish it, we also had to run it. So now we bear the costs of establishing, and we keep on expanding it. Like last year, we did a whole, commemoration of Sindh, and the Sindhis who came to the museum said, this is the first time. This has never happened in this country, that our loss and theirs was actually a really big loss, because their homeland was left behind in Pakistan completely. So they came and they, for 3 days, commemorated Sindh, and they sang the Madam Mast Kalandar, and they danced and they ate Sindhi curry, and they kind of felt so bonded, with each other. And this is what we want to do. We want to make this a place where people remember their ancestors, remember their roots, remember where they came from, and yet do not forget the very, very important point that this is a story from which we can take a lot of inspiration. So the museum carries on. It's been a very difficult 8-9 months for us. So I would really, really encourage all of you, even if you can't visit, please do donate towards us. You can let us know if you want to share oral histories. Donations can be in any kind. It can be oral histories. It can be material objects. It can be money, which is the most important point, because we have not sacked anyone during the pandemic, even though the museum has been shut and we have not been able to earn anything. But we have kept everybody with us in the hope that things will change soon. And we cannot allow this heritage and legacy project to languish. So we are all working very hard. We're still trying to raise money. We're still doing oral histories online, and as Nanki will tell you. So we have not given up, and the museum is going to expand further. We have plans now for the next round, which is going to be at the 75th anniversary of the partition and so on. I will not reveal everything, but any of you who are interested can certainly please get in touch with us, because I'm sure you may want to participate in that in some way. So thank you so much. I hope I haven't taken up too much time. Rashmi, is that all right? I can't hear you. It's on mute. You're on mute.
It was just incredible, Kishwar. You are such an inspiration. And what you've achieved, maybe you were born to just achieve this and do this, make this gift to India, to our country, and to all the voiceless people who never got a chance to share their stories. And thousands of families must be blessing you for this, because you've honored them and their stories. And thanks for sharing the future plans. And thanks for sharing with us what you need. I think it's very important if we can all help you with a little donation, because you don't have a godfather, and how you built it with miracle after miracle. So we're really proud of you, Kishwar, and all the Shakti, all the energy to you to do more. But tell me, do you have a tax exemption status?
Yes, we do. We have ATG.
Wonderful. So you're like a registered NGO, right?
Yeah, we're a registered NGO.
Fantastic. So really amazing. I'm sure there are lots of comments and lots of questions, and those, especially those who have actually traveled there and been there, they're dying to share. But before we do that, I would love to invite partners, other ELSAs who've partnered with you shoulder to shoulder to make things happen. So we have Dipali Khanna here, ELSA History 72. Dipali, hi. So delighted to have you here, Dipali, founder, member, and trustee of the Partition Museum, also the treasurer. You've been there from the start, and you were a civil servant, also the former CEO of the Indira Gandhi National Arts Center of Arts, founder member of the Arts and Cultural Heritage Trust, and has closely been working together with Kishwar, and especially interfacing with the government. So do share with us, Dipali. I know it's we're a little short of time. We just give it, but share with us, how does the public-private partnership worked and what are the difficulties you had, and how did you make it happen? We'd love to hear that from you.
Okay, thank you, Rashmi. Thank you, Elsa. I can see, I can see the audience is really knowledgeable, sensitive. I think, Kishwar, it must be a very nice, this will be very different. You've been talking about this all over. So Kishwar has really laid it out exactly as it was, and we could go on and on forever. But coming to the government, having worked in the government, everybody knows it's not easy dealing with the government. Government is always scary. I've been on the other side. And in this case, because it was a PPP project, a public-private partnership, and I would imagine even today, maybe one of the only ones really in the cultural space. So they were, people find it strange. Why did they have to go through a bidding process when you were bringing in the money, you were going to operate it, and you were going to do everything? So who were you bidding, against? But that's government. So we went through the DPR. Kishwar soon became, a good, she learned all these EOI, expression of interest, RFP, request for proposal. And we went through this very, very stringent bidding process and put in everything, and it had to be online, which had its own challenges. And when we thought it's over, came the news, there's some technical issue, and you have to do the bidding once again. And I know those days, Kishwar used to get a call literally in the middle of the night that you have to attend a meeting in the morning. I attended some with her, but she attended thousands of them. And again, I don't want to go on and on about what you talked about, the Junoon. So even dealing with the government, they were very, they were transparent, honest, and they had this objective that they wanted, the museum to come up. But you have to go through government processes. People change, there are transfers. You've convinced one person, he's gone away. Now you have to redo the whole thing with another person. And the engineers and the review meetings, sitting there quietly. We used to have a lot of jokes between us. Some of them, saying whatever they had to, and we had to be good. We had to be patient. We had to be calm. We couldn't lose anything. We didn't want to annoy anybody. But in the end, the museum did come through. And as I say, it's perhaps a shine and perhaps the only example of a PPP in government. What Kishwar talked about it, but I'd like to say a little more. I think what really stood us instead was a trust which has maintained the highest standards of probity. I think, it was just the people who set it up. It was just, my dad's been in the government. He incidentally was in the Lahore Government College where he got a gold medal. So it's just the people. We just came with good values. We came in with, the way we had to do it. And initially, I'm just a government person, retired, but we spent our own money in the, the air tickets, is staying in hotels over there. And what I grudge the museum even today is you go there, you want to eat chaat from that evergreen shop across. You jolly well take out your own money and buy the chaat, and you'll just get a cup of coffee. So it's inbuilt in us. And even today, you have to follow their very rigorous reporting, monitoring, auditing, all those processes you have to follow. And they even want to share the little revenue we get. So you have to keep very, very close account of what you're earning. But all of this, I think, has earned the trust and the Partition Museum an amazing reputation with the state government. And the very fact that they reach out and they say, to do more and more. And I know when I was in the government, if I rarely met an agency like that, even I would just go all out, to do whatever I could. So, I think in the end, it has again been Kishwar's tenacity. I remember that part when she said we have to air condition this museum. And I, coming from the government, I said, oh my God, Kishwar, where will you get money to air condition the museum? But it was like you dream high, yes, and you'll fulfill it. So this was the tip of the iceberg, but it's been an amazing journey. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful sharing. I know working with the government, but once you do, it's just the sincerity of the whole project.
Exactly.
And you got everyone together. Kishwar, kudos to you. Amazing. It's fantastic. And what a wonderful that the party that you're with her from then and continue to be. It's so all the best for the future also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Many more successes there. And we have with us Pinky Anand, additional Solicitor General, also in ELSA, who inspired us all very recently with the beautiful ELSAConnect. She's a trustee of the Partition Museum, and of course has been very, very supportive and engaged with the museum from the beginning. Pinky, we'd love you to say, what inspired you to help the museum? What is it that drew you there and got you to work with the whole team?
And thanks so much for having me in. I was here recently and I couldn't resist the offer of coming again. So don't keep inviting me. You might find me accepting more often than not.
We love you.
However, what interested me, I love diversity. I love creativity. I love visions. I love dreams. I love the nation. I love hope. I like memories. I live with them. So, I mean, each of these features put together, and the thing that we could bring up something which is going to come afresh and build itself into history. You know, we are talking about history at the same time, creating yet another history of creating the first public museum or people's museum, as we call it, or the Partition Museum itself was something that excited me. I might say that I come from a partition family myself. Of course, my family came to India pre-partition. So I always used to hear from my mother and my father. They came very young. They were 15 and 17 when they came away from Pakistan, as it was then. Or rather undivided India, so to say, in 46. But after coming here, the way they used to keep talking, so I've always wanted to go back and see. So I went back to Lahore also, and I cherished some of the memories there and thought back on days. But as I said, the real thing was that I like to do things. I'm myself a multifarious kind of person. I can't stay in one chamber forever. And of course, it helps to have a friend like Kishwar, who of course is the complete inspiration in this entire deal. But she's not given enough credit to Meghnad. I must say that even though Meghnad was not the forerunner, he is the strongest supporter a woman could ever hope for. So kudos to Meghnad. And I met them in London after a gap. Incidentally, Kishwar and I were together in school in Presentation Convent, and then ELSA for some time. And of course, she's lived a very colorful life herself in various ways, and was always one of the ones who was jumping up. I used to even play basketball together at one point. I don't know if Kishwar will remember that. But so coming back, when I met Kishwar, and Kishwar talked about the Partition Museum, and she asked whether I would be joining in, I was more than happy. I just loved that. As I said, putting it brick by brick. And believe me, the brick was a very important component of the Partition Museum. As much as the inauguration ceremonies were, when we got Badalji there, that was one of the most exciting time. With the Tree of Life with Arun Jaitley ji, of course, he, as you know, he contested from Amritsar, so he had a very strong bonding with that particular state. And of course, we don't have him anymore with us. Sidhu ji, who came along with this Mahesh Bhatt's movie Begum Jaan, which of course came at a very appropriate time, and we could actually show that. I mean, you know, each of these occasions built itself into the each and every brick and mortar of Partition Museum. We saw it coming up. We went over wires, we went over papers, we went over dust, we went over no electricity, we went over each of these areas. But the fun part of it was doing, creating, envisioning something which is going to stand the test of time. And that's what was the most exciting.
Fabulous, Pinky. You really allude that. I mean, it's so exciting to hear you all, because it excites us all. And what you've achieved is something you're so proud of for the country, and the enthusiasm, and it's opened it up to everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your sharing. We have Bunty here. Bunty is another ELSA. I love the English. English honors 77. Abha Soni, all the way from New York. She's got up at unearthly hour at 5 o'clock to attend today's ELSAConnect. Abha is the executive director of the Sanskriti Center, a nonprofit dedicated to the classical arts, and she works at the Met, attached to the Islamic department. Bunty has organized several events to the museum opening, especially in New York, 2 events. And I remember when Kishwar did the ELSA NGO Mela that we had, and Bunty was with you, Kishwar, when you came and spoke, always so full of enthusiasm. So Bunty, you have so many amazing stories to share, but we'd love you to share about at least one of your stories where you basically the oral histories and how you have that you've introduced to the museum. Would you like to share one of your most wonderful stories with all of us today?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rashmi. Hi, Kishwar. Kishwar and I were in college together. We were roommates, best friends.
Wow.
And Kishwar got me onto this project, and I was very excited to be on it because my husband's family and my family have a history with partition and independence, and the whole history of the museum attaches to that. So for me, museums, as you said, I've always worked with museums the last 30 years, are very important because they actually hold our history and our memories.
Yeah.
And it's for children, I think it's the best way to learn history because it's shown through human eyes, you know. And I think the Partition Museum is like one of the most wonderful examples of that. So as Kishwar was saying, my house in Delhi had all the memorabilia for the Partition Museum lying there for a couple of years. And but in New York, I had 2 events. And as Kishwar was saying, it was an amazing revelation to me how people reacted. The first event, we ended up having 70 people. And we had 2 lecturers, one Meenu Tharoor from NYU, and we had Manan Ahmad, who's a Pakistani from Columbia University, speaking on partition. So we had both sides represented from Punjab. And the reaction was overwhelming. Every museum representative was there from New York, from the Met, Modern Art Museum, and I realized how important this museum was going to be.
Yeah.
And so I've started recording oral histories in New York as well. And I will share one of my most interesting ones.
Yeah.
So I got this gentleman from Lahore whose father had actually been in Jallianwala Bagh when the incident took place. And he is married to a Holocaust survivor. So these 2 refugees found each other in New York, and they traveled all the way from Baltimore to come over to my house to be recorded. The story is there in the museum. I've sent it across, and I've recorded a few others. We will hope to record many more. With the pandemic, we're closed right now. And I would encourage LSRians in Canada and in America to get in touch with me to be recorded. If you know histories, I know there's a huge Sikh community in Canada, huge Punjabi and Sikh community in Canada and the US. So if you have stories, come and share them. I'm in New York, please get in touch. And recently, somebody got in touch with me, and now the Sherwani, with a 100-year-old Sherwani of her grandfather's,
wow,
which is gleaming and beautiful as today as it was when he got married.
Wow.
So we've had wonderful, moving experiences like that. And I'm an advisor with the museum and really proud to be part of it. And I'm really grateful Kishwar got me on because it is the most inspirational, wonderful thing that I've ever done. So thank you, Rashmi. I'm not going to take more of your time.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for the lovely sharing. Of course, you're missing Malika today, who's the CEO and the curator of the museum. But we have Nanki here, who's another powerhouse, ELSA, who's basically working very closely with the team ELSA as well, accepting stories of oral histories and artifacts. Would you like to share something, Nanki? Would you like to share something about the recent stories you got or with the ELSAs here?
Okay, thank you so much for having me here today. So I work at the Partition Museum and of course with the whole team, and I collect oral history interviews. I go out and interview partition survivors in Delhi, and now with the pandemic, we've actually developed our oral history program in such a way that we can conduct virtual interviews. So over the past few months, I've been conducting interviews from all across the world. And this has given us the opportunity actually to connect with so many other people we couldn't do in person. So in fact, now we started getting stories from all sides of the border, not only India, but people from Pakistan, from Bangladesh. And that just makes the museum's collection even more closely connected with all people, you know, and really makes it a people's museum. And of course, on the ELSA group, I've been seeing a lot of touching stories, and we're very excited to share them in the museum and on our social media pages. But if anyone is willing to, you know, have us interview them and help them record and preserve their families' memories, that would be amazing if we could do that. So please feel free to get in touch with me, and I will set up interviews.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. So some questions, lots of questions coming in, comments coming in. I'd like to ask Padmini.
Rashmi, you've gotten muted.
Padmini, sorry. Thank you so much, Nanki. I wanted to invite Padmini Sankar, who would like to ask a question. Are you here, Padmini?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Actually, I have a couple of questions.
The first, you can limit it to one. We are short of time.
All right. Does Pakistan have a similar museum of memories, or is it in the pipeline? That's my question. Does anybody know that? I mean, do they have, because they have also suffered, I mean, like both.
Yes, can I answer that? Can I answer that? Yeah. Okay. So to be very honest, they have been attempting to do this for a while. And I know that there were moves to have a similar museum. The only thing we know about it was that it was meant to come up in Lahore. And then, because I heard about it in the UK. And so people were very interested when they saw how well with God's grace, ours was doing. So they thought that they also should have a similar one. I know they've been recording a lot of oral histories, but honestly, with everything that's been going on, there is very little information about that we have today. But I know that there was a move. I have no idea what happened with it eventually.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for asking. Vanita is here, Vanita Sethi. Vanita, would you like to ask your question? You wanted to ask a question. Are you there, Vanita? She was here a little while ago. Otherwise, there is Pragya, who also had a question. Pragya, would you like to ask your question till Vanita comes in?
Thank you, Rashmi. Thanks, Kishwar, for a really inspirational, your experiences which you related. Thank you so much. Just wanted to ask, what has been the biggest lesson you've learned so far in life?
In life or while doing the museum?
Both. If you want to,
in a way,
or anyone, whichever one.
For many years, the museum was my life, as my husband will tell you. As I think, I don't know who it was, Pinky said that I had not given him enough credit, but he will himself admit how hard he tried to dissuade me from the entire thing. But that's what husbands are for. The more they dissuade you, the more you want to do it. So I thought that, okay, wo nana karenge, hum ha karenge. So basically, regarding the lessons, I think the only lesson is always the fact that if you do have a dream, if you do have something, don't stop. Just go ahead, do it. Somehow, miraculously, everybody comes along. Things will happen. Things will change. Yes, there will be difficult moments. There will be times when you feel really down and out, and then there will be moments when people try and drag you down, etc., etc. But I don't think that is really important. If you're passionate, then you will just keep that goal in front of you and say, I am going to achieve this. I am going to get there. And I will tell you what has happened to me recently. For example, even the book that I've just written on Devika Rani, I was very disheartened because in a lot of ways, this was a book I wanted to write for many years, for 15 years. And I was going everywhere, here, there, Australia, New York, I wasn't really getting all the material that I needed. It was not coming my way because people wanted me to pay them. They were willing to give me material, but they said that you have to pay us XYZ. So it's really, again, a miracle. I think you just keep hunting, and ultimately I did come across a whole lot of information, which came to me sometimes in trickles from various places, but it came, and ultimately I managed to write the book. So I'm just saying that I could have given up on this, maybe 10 years ago or whatever, and said, I can't write this. But now it is a book that I'm really proud of because it has come out as an original piece of work, most of it. And I have pieced together something like 4,000 documents from which I have taken various, new information and put it all out there. So the lesson is persist. Don't give up. Even if somebody tells you give up, just don't.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Lage raho munna bhai, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, Vanita is here. Vanita, I'm sorry you were muted. Would you like to share your question, Vanita?
So what is next now? Tell me. My question is, what is next? Because
whenever you, and we've been reading stories thanks to Vandana and the team on, partition. And I have not been able to put down the stories of my grandparents yet. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of blocking up. But I also have been heading a lot of SARC initiatives in my, career. And I feel there is a immense intent on both sides to connect at one-to-one level. How can your Partition Museum and our Partition Museum be that kind of a conduit that brings people together? What's next for you on agenda? Maybe on those lines.
When you said your Partition Museum, I'm not clear.
You mean Partition Museum in Amritsar, which is now I'm saying else.
Okay, right. For us, I've always said that, the dream is that at least let's get this museum up to the level that we really wanted to reach. We are in the process of expanding the Bengal sections. We are also in the process of creating a whole new, as I said, I can't give away everything right now, but hopefully for the 75th anniversary, we will have something quite spectacular also in the museum. We have been asked by various governments to look at other heritage projects, which we are trying to do as well. But these are all very difficult things. So, it's not like and that is the beauty of it all, is that, heritage in India requires so much work. You cannot absolutely stop anywhere. So there is nothing holding us back. There is a lot of things on the agenda. There are a lot of things which are going on. We are in discussions, etc. So we haven't stopped. But yes, the 75th year is very important for us. Expanding certain sections in the museum is very important. So we already have those goals ahead of us. And then there are also these other heritage projects that we are, in talks with the various governments. And we're trying to see which one of those that we might be able to undertake. Because these are all very tough things. We have to, again, raise the money, work on them, get the research, and very exciting because it's all, it's green fields. Anybody wants to come into this particular area, there is just so much work that you can do, so much good work you can do. And I'm a volunteer in all of this. I must say this. I do not take a single penny, like as Dipali was saying, even she, poor thing, has spent so much out of her own pocket. The museum really should give her a big IOU. But the point is that this is what happens to all of us all the time, including Bunty, everybody. I'm sure even Nanki could have that complaint that occasionally she has to spend, though hopefully we pay you. But the thing is that we do need to have that kind of altruism where heritage in India is concerned. Many heritage structures are falling apart and not being properly utilized, etc. So I think we are more focused on that right now.
I'm sure it will inspire many more people to do what you've done, at least a little bit out towards what you've done. But
well, if they contribute towards us, we can do a lot more. Yeah,
right. And I think we should all consider that as ELSA's support Kishwar and the whole Partition Museum team to see how we can contribute besides stories, how we can help you in any way you can. So you should just keep dreaming and keep asking, sending a wish list to all of us. Okay. ELSA's in Canada, ELSA's in the US, ELSA's all over. So we are all your sisters here. But we do have a question from Sana Zera. Sana, would you like to ask your question? If Sana's there, I think we're a little short of time.
Hi. Hi, this is Sana. Hi, Kishwar. Thank you for the wonderful work. I don't know how to ask this question actually without sounding insensitive. But what did you think were the common reasons for people's silence about such a traumatic experience?
Well, actually, that is a pretty well-researched subject. And yes, you're right. It's very, very sensitive. But it implied to my parents as well. I think one of the things which was very clear to all of us was that just after partition, there were so many problems for people to deal with. They had to deal with livelihoods, loss of lives, finding themselves a new home, getting back onto the feet. They did not want to traumatize their children or anybody around them with the horrific stories that they had heard or the experiences that they had been through. This I can vouch for my own grandparents, because my mother remembers that, when they lost everything overnight, they left in a big rush from Lahore, came to Amritsar with one small suitcase. And then, of course, they were well looked after, but the trauma never went away. And so she remembers her mother never, ever alluding to the partition. It was almost like it had never happened. So this was something she wanted to protect. And so the children thought, oh, this is a very long school holiday that they were going through, because they were not going to school, they were playing at home, etc. So there were a lot of parents and grandparents who were extremely protective. That was one reason for the silence. The second reason was, over the years, people were worried that will this kind of memory lead to any kind of communal violence again or something like that. I think there was a worry there also. But there was also a worry that, do we really want to revisit these painful memories? It was that sort of thing. I think that became the primary concern, that these painful memories, we should have, little realizing that the people who had been through it actually needed to talk about it, because it was like a katha and a recognition for them that they had been through so much. So I think it was a combination of all of that. Now historians and everybody are agreed that these oral histories that we have, for example, running in the museum and elsewhere, have historical merit and have historical value. And there is a lot we can learn. So when this kind of trauma happens again, the first question I always ask is, I hope these people are getting some counseling, because there were lots and lots of unrecognized, pushed under the carpet, many mental health issues, many other traumatic things which happened to families at that time. So the silence was definitely not good. And especially for the women who disappeared, do you know, there are still families who do not know what happened to many women members in their family. They just disappeared, and they were just allowed to just disappear. And if we have these horrible, we have this knowledge, of course, which is really heartbreaking. If ever a woman kind of disappeared, went to the other side, and she tried to contact her family, they would not acknowledge her, because they did not want that, somebody who had left her home and was now living with some other family on the other side of the border could come back home. So these were very, very painful things. So I think the silence did not help anyone. It was actually a big trauma for everybody all around, and it should not have happened that way.
Can I ask one more follow-up question on that? Thank you for answering.
Sanya, can you wait till we finish
Sorry,
this, and then
sorry,
then we'll have half an hour. Stay back, and then we can ask lots more questions informally with Kishwar. But I'd like to give Sandhya as well as Yamna, our lovely Elsa Bangaloreans here, who their chance to ask questions before we close, right? And then we can, yes, Sandhya, go ahead.
Hi, Kishwar. In complete awe listening to this session. My question is actually just out of curiosity, that where did you begin research on a project of this scale? How did you take that first step of research?
Okay, thank you for that question, because it's very, very important, especially when you're setting up a museum. A museum is not a book. I think that is the first criteria that we had to apply. A museum comprises of objects, which could be material, non-material, which could be visual, or experiential. It has to be things which people can see, touch, observe, read very little, because people don't have the patience to sit and read. So, but yes, we did start our research first by going through all the books which had been written about the partition. Then, of course, going through the, I would say, millions. I haven't even reached, the final, because it's impossible. There were so many files. We were just going from the British Library in the UK to the National Archives to many other archives out there, even to the National War Museum, to this, that, and the other. And of course, in the archives here, and in the Punjab government archives. We were going everywhere, wherever there were stories. What helped us a great deal was that we had a very strong narrative. The one thing we did was that we very clearly planned the flow. And if you go to the museum, you will see that there is a specific flow, the way the museum goes, from one, as I said, 14 chapters, it goes from one to the other. So we exactly and precisely knew, right, even in the beginning, what we were looking for. And then we could begin to shortlist the documentation and the material, and then go after that very thing specifically, because we also had a deadline. You know, we also needed to finish, and we didn't have much money. So whatever resources we had, I think we utilized them to the best of our ability, and we tried to research as much as possible. And yes, that's where my husband put in a huge amount of help, because he's an academic. He reads very fast. We also got other historians involved who also have a background of partition history, and they also helped us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Super. Yumna, can we have your questions?
Hi. You know, Kishwar, this has been so amazing. Like, I think the work that you've done has been so phenomenal. Also, thank you for agreeing to come on and talk, as well as everybody else who did join, you know, Pinky and Bunty and Dipali, thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to be very short. You know, the atomic bomb survivors have this, the survivors used to tell stories live about their experiences in order to ensure that such a thing never happened again. And as that generation has begun to pass away, they've begun to train younger generations to carry this on. I believe the training takes 3 years just because of the power of the personal testimony. Now, is that something that, you know, we could consider for the Partition Museum as well? It was really a suggestion more than a question, and also kudos and thank you.
Yes, you're saying that there could be some form of training which is given to people who are working in the museum. Is that what you are suggesting? Yeah.
Live storytellers who tell it in the first person. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, those things are all being planned. I mean, definitely, we are looking at you know, experiential, you know, upping the experience that people, museum visitors get. So that will all be happening now. Unfortunately, it's planned for this year, and so were other things which have all gone a little awry. And next year onwards, you will find that there will be such you know, dramatic offerings as well as experiential offerings, which will be increasing in the museum. God willing, we have to keep the donations coming in for that to happen. But hopefully, all of that will take place in the coming year. Thank you.
With all your magical ways, the money will come in. You just
I don't know.
Keep dreaming,
I hope
Kishwar.
so.
But before we end, I'd also like to mention that the ELSAs from Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore made a special ELSA trip to Amritsar, and they visited the Partition Museum. Maybe after this formal thing is over, they can chat with you and tell you what their experience was. But I'd like to invite Tanya now to share the next session of the ELSAConnect with us.
Very quickly, can I say something, Rashmi, and to Kishwar? I think your, hi Kishwar, I'm Binu. Your symbolism, hi.
Thank you for
Very
the story.
nice.
Thank you for the story.
Yeah, I visited the museum last year, and I think I thought that symbolism of that the sword which is going through was what actually impacted me a huge deal, because physically what you saw, it was a partition, it was a division of the countries and land, but it was also a division which was very, very gruesome, of people, of hearts, of lives, etc., etc. But I also have my experience of visiting Pakistan much, much later and not so long ago was an emotional one. It touched us, but it was also very, very warm and loving. And we've all heard that when we visit that country, there is so much of love and awe and admiration that is shown us. But I was able to discover, trace the roots of the houses that we lived in Lahore and Karachi. We went to the Wagah border. So it was a very happy and a very memorable visit, I would say. I don't know why. We are a generation post that time. We've also heard of stories from our parents, which are very heart-wrenching, and they had a lot of hatred, they had a lot of thing, and they didn't want to talk about it as we were selling things.
Yes. Binu, I'm sure we can chat a little later with Kishwar.
Thank you.
So thanks for sharing, and you've written a beautiful story, which I'm sure all of us have read, and it shares all this what you share. So Tanya, would you like to come in and share the next ELSAConnect?
Thank you, Rashmi. And thank you, Kishwar. It was beautiful to listen to you. And I am really looking forward to coming to the Partition Museum.
Good.
It's been in the works, but it just hasn't happened so far. Thank you so much. And I'm here to invite all of you for the next session on Tuesday, the 10th of November with Shweta Taneja. She's an author and a journalist. She's had 7 books published already, and she's on to her next, which is her first nonfiction book. She's had 300 articles across media, across Mint, Femina, Scroll, etc. And through her work, she really voices her passion for nature, diversity, and diverse fiction and fantasy. And she will talk about how she has creeped out of her comfort zone in 2020 and is also publishing her first nonfiction book. I said that. Join us and discover more about Shweta on 10th of November at 4 p.m. right here. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Kishwar, really at a loss of words to thank you for this incredible inspiration that you are and phenomenal woman, what you've achieved. We as ELSAs are really all inspired. I'm sure many will visit the museum and many will be there to support you. We'll also come with our own stories and share whatever else we can do for you. So just feel free to share that with us. And thank you, Dipali, Pinky, Bunty, Nanki. You really define the ELSA spirit of teamwork and excellence. Thank you, the ELSA tech team and all the elders who share their incredible stories of their elders. And I'm sure we would all like to contribute to getting stories, memorabilia from our extended family and friends. We are your sisters, your Kishwar, your ELSA sisters. And for the active participation of everyone today who was here today to hear Kishwar. So we'll close for now, but stay on because we will chat with Kishwar following this. I think our timing is just right. Am I right? We're good.